So welcome to Mix and Match Blanket Club, everybody. This is our August session for Mix and Match Blanket Club, and we're going to be covering ribbing on cables today. The ones that we're going to do are starting on page 94. I'm going to demonstrate 4 different ones. One that's in ribbing, and once you get the idea of ribbing, you really don't need more than one demonstration of that. So we're going to start on page 94 with corrugated ribs, and then we're going to do the chunky cable, which is on page 95, which I think is my favorite. And then we're going to switch over to number 65 and do Jacob's ladder, which is an interesting way to make a cable, a little bit different way to make a cable. And then we're going to finish up with, I think, the most complicated thing I've ever tried to do in crochet, number 69, braids. But I was so intrigued by the look of it, I had to give it a shot. And I understand how it works, but I would say fiddly is an understatement to get it started. But I did work through it and happy to show that. So let's get started with what I thought was easier. So the corrugated ribs. Let me move my look over here so I could see better. All right, so the corrugated ribs, you will often see ribbing. I'm going to move to the camera while I talk here. Ribbing in crochet, you will often see it on the edging of hats. So if you are also a knitter, most hats have around the edging a rib, which allows it to stretch a little bit. It usually comes in and has some negative ease and then stretches to fit. But you can do ribbing in a lot of different ways. One of the things we talked about in class this morning, because we had some really good questions, was because ribbing is designed to be a little bit stretchy, is this strip going to be too stretchy or obnoxiously stretchy in my blanket? And the answer is, I think, no. And she did this for a reason. When you're doing ribbing, particularly if you're knitting, if you're doing like a knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, that's going to be the stretchiest of the ribbings because they're right next to each other. The further you get away from each other when you make your rib, the less stretchy it is. So if you do a 2x2 ribbing, so 2 knits, 2 purls, it's a little less stretchy. 3 knits, 2 purls is a little less stretchy. So these are not so close together because they're using an extended double crochet. They're not so close together that they are really, really stretchy. It's got a little stretch, but I would say no more than a regular pattern. I don't feel like it's stretching any more than any of the other stitches that we've done. Okay. She does another ribbing in here that incorporates slip stitch, a single crochet and a slip stitch, which are much closer together, but she adds that slip stitch to tighten it up so that they don't stretch too much. So she's accounted for that. And I think that one was number, hold on, I'll tell you in just a second. I think it's the Neat Sweet Ribs on number 67, page 99. And those ribs are much closer together, but she uses a slip stitch to keep them from being too stretchy, okay? So you're always going to be making a rib by incorporating front loops or back loops only. That's how you get the stitches to pull forward and back. So remember, we're making our strip this way, but it's going to lie in our blanket this way. And if we were making the ribbing of a hat, it would be going this way so that it would stretch this way, okay? Okay, so corrugated ribs. What's nice about this pattern, and we've had this come up a couple of times, is that you can do it over any multiple of stitches. It doesn't require a certain number of stitches to do it. So if you are putting your blanket together and you realize, oh, I really need to add some more of a particular color, this would be a nice small, or you need to add a little bit more width to your blanket. You could add a strip of this in any size you chose. So you could chain any that you wanted to make it any width that you wanted. and it's not so boring as just doing double crochet. It adds a little bit of texture and a little bit of interest. It keeps you interested. So this stitch incorporates back loop stitches as well as extended double crochet, which is abbreviated EDC. We did talk about these in the very first section in the classic stitches. I believe the extended double crochet, I'm just going to flip back real quick, is on page 36. Number 7 was an extended double crochet. And that doesn't incorporate back loop, but if you need a refresher or a description, it is listed there. It's also listed in the back of the book. She talks about extended stitches, but I'm going to demonstrate it for you now. And I think it makes a nice, it makes it a little bit taller than a double crochet and not quite as tall as a triple crochet. Anytime you see extended in a stitch, because you can have an extended single, an extended half double, an extended triple, all they're doing is adding one additional yarn over to your stitch, which makes every time you add a yarn over, it gets taller. So we're just adding one extra one in here. So I think I have put, I don't remember even how many I started with. I didn't write it down in my notes. Let's see. I wrote it down here. No, I didn't. So you can do any multiple of chains that you want, okay? If you're doing chains, then you do a row of single, or you could do a foundation single crochet row. And then if you were doing that, then you would move on to row 2, which is your right side, which is where I'm going to start today. Chain 2 does not count as a stitch. There we go. And we are going to 1 EDC BLO in each stitch to the end, which means 1 extended double crochet back loop only in every stitch across. Okay, let me, there we go. Focus. Okay, so it starts like a regular crochet, yarn over. I'm going to go into the back loop of my stitch and pull through my yarn, and I've got 3 loops on the hook. Here's where we're going to add our extra yarn over. Yarn over, just pull through 1. I still have 3 loops on my hook. Now it finishes like a regular double crochet. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that extra yarn over just makes it slightly taller. Okay. So we're going, and I think I did this in class here. On this previous row is a demonstration here. All of these are extended double crochets. These right here, the second half of these, are just regular double crochets because we wanted to see how much of a difference it actually made. Mm-hmm. And it does make it. I think it's a very nice stitch. It's not too open and loose like a triple would be. That would be really kind of loosey goosey, but it's a little taller than a regular double crochet. So then we just continue on back loop only, and I just tend to turn it over, yarn over, pull through 1. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. The hardest part is just remembering that first, just stop and just pull through 1. But once you get in the rhythm, it goes pretty good. See, I already did it. I already pulled through 2.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a faster stitch.
Exactly. Yeah. So through 1. So it builds up a little faster than a regular double crochet without having the openness of a double. Just flip it here. So this is a nice easy one. Your return row or your wrong side row is going to be doing a single crochet back loop only all the way across. 1, 2, 2. So this one would be a good one for TV watching. 1, 2, 2. And anytime you're doing you're following a pattern, and if it's got you doing rows of double crochet, you could always replace those with the extended double crochet just to get a little bit different look, or if you just want it to work up a little bit faster.
Well, I've done some cable before, but it does look a little better with wider
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me. Yeah.
right. So then you would, for row 3, you chain 1 and turn, also does not count as a stitch. And
Mhm.
remember, if it tells you it does not count as a stitch, you're always going to be making your first stitch into the very first opening that you can. You won't be
Mhm.
skipping this first one. The only time you skip that first one is if they tell you
It's
that your
count.
turning chain counts as a stitch. So we ended up talking about different patterns and how they're not standardized and nobody says the same thing. But typically, a good pattern will tell you where to put your stitch. If you're not sure, if you read to the end of the whatever you're supposed to do at the end of the row, if it tells you where to put your last stitch, if it tells you to put a stitch in the last chain, then you know you're using your turning chain as a stitch. If it tells you to put your stitch in the last stitch, then you're not using your turning chain. That's just kind of a general rule. All right, so again, single crochet, I chained 1, single crochet, back loop only. And when you do the back loop only, it pushes your row forward. If I were to do front loop only, it would push your row back. By doing it back loop only on both sides, it forces that to just pop out. And it looks nice on both sides as well. Let me get across here and I'll show you. But it is clear what is your right side and what is your wrong side, because the side you're popping it backwards here, but we're popping it forwards on the other side. So we get to the end. So this is my back side, and here's my front side. It looks much nicer because that chain fits. So it's a little wonky here because these stitches right here were regular doubles, but I think it looks quite nice from here. So it adds a little texture. It's an easy stitch. And I feel like it's not too holey. It's a nice stitch for a blanket. So that's the corrugated ribs. Has a nice stretch and texture. Okay, the next one is the chunky cable, which I love this one. It's fairly easy to do. I think it looks really nice. It has a nice little twist to it. Chunky cable. So this one it says to chain 17. So if you're doing chains and then a row of single, you're going to end up with a total of 16 stitches that you're working with across there.
Okay.
If we talked about this morning, if you had wanted to add an additional cable, so if you had wanted to repeat this pattern and have 2 cables in this strip instead of just 1, you could do that. It's got 5 stitches on each side, so that's 10, and your cable is 6 stitches. So if you had wanted to add, if you didn't want to do 5, a cable, 5, 5, a cable, 5, you could do 5 stitches, your 6 stitches of the cable, 5 stitches again, 6 stitches of the cable, and then 5 for your edging. So you could add a total of 11 stitches to add a second cable into this pattern. Just a little helpful note there. Right, I'm going to pull this back because we've got so far. So this pattern starts with, let's see, a row, actually 2 rows of double crochet. So you do either your foundation and single across, your foundation single crochet row, or your chain and a row of single across, and then you do 2 full rows of double crochet to get started. And then I think I've completed it there. So you have a nice little, so your cable starts coming out of row of double crochet. And then when you finish this strip, if you look forward, you repeat, it's a 2-row repeat, and then you will finish it with a row of double crochet and then a row of single. So you'll have a nice border with your cable centered in there. All right, so let me show you how to do the cable. We're going to pretend we just finished a row, our second row of double crochet here. And I'm going to move on to row 4, which is the crossed cable row. So we're going to chain 2, which does not count as a stitch in this pattern. 1, 2. Let's see if I actually chain 2. There we go. Chain 1 and chain 2. All right, so now we're going to do 5 double crochets. This pattern is always going to start and end with 5 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. So then we're going to do, we're going to skip 3 stitches. Okay. So I'm going to skip the next 3 stitches. And sometimes it's easier after you've started doing your cables. If you're not sure, it's hard to see the post of the stitch. If you look for the tops of the stitch, it's easy to see which 3 you're supposed to skip. I'm going to skip 1, 2, and 3. And my next stitch is going to go in right here. Okay. Just going to put my thumb there. And I'm going to do 1 front post treble, which means I'm going to yarn over twice. And anytime you're doing the cables and you're kind of stretching your stitch across, it's almost always going to have you do a taller stitch than what you've previously been doing to give it a little room to stretch. So I'm going to do a front post treble, which means I'm going to go into the post of the stitch below, which is right there in the front. And then 2, 2, and 2. And I'm supposed to do that around the next 3 stitches. 1, that is 1. I'm not going into the top, going around the post. And 3. Now we're going to go back and we're going to put 3 front post trebles around those 3 stitches that we skipped. So now we kind of have to find them. So I'm just going to move this over out of the way a little bit so you can see. Once you get the first one, the others start to pop out. So here's the 3 that we skipped. 1, 2, and 3. So again, we're stretching, so we're going to do it as a triple. I'm going to find the first one right there that I skipped. And just cross in front there. 1, 2, 3. And once you get that first one, it's easy to see the next one because they just kind of pop out a little. 2. And there's the third one. So anytime you're doing a cable, all you're doing is you are changing the order of the stitches. So we skipped these and we did these first, and then we went back and did these. So we just reversed where the stitches come in. And then we're going to finish with 5 double crochets. So we're going to look to the stitches we have not worked yet. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, when you're working back and forth, the top of the stitch that you want to work into is always slightly to the left. So I would not go in here because that's the top of this front post that we already did. I want to go right here to this. If you're working in the round like a granny, if you're never flipping your work back over, if you're always staying on the right side, then the top of your stitch is always to the right. But if you're flipping it back and forth, it's always to the left once you turn it over. Okay, so there's my 5 doubles. So I've made the cross. So now I've got these stitches kind of stretching across here. And our return row is what locks them in place. And that would be row 5. I'm going to chain 2. And I'm going to start with my 5 doubles in those same 5 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then I'm going to do 1 back post double around the next 6 front post trebles from before. Okay, so I need to go around, because these are post stitches, I need to make sure I'm going not into the top of the stitch, but the post. But I want to do them in the order that they're presenting now, because I want to lock them in that place. So I'm doing a back post double around each of the next ones. So here's the first one. Here's the post of it. I'll come from the back and do, whoop, that again. Come from the back, pull it through, and finish your double. So what it does, I'm going to flip it over so I can show you what it does. What it does is it extends that triple that we stretched, it extends it up and locks it into place so it's not so stretched anymore, so that we can stretch it again on the next row. All right, and then I'm gonna have to open it up a little bit to find the next one, but it's pretty easy to do. If I would pull out some yarn, let's see, there we go. This is definitely one I want to add because I really like the way it looks. I do think it's
It looks really soft that way too.
Yes, it's nice. It's easy to do. It's easy to see where you're supposed to put the stitch, and it's a nice 2-row repeat. You don't have to, you're not glued to your book the whole time. Okay, so those were the ones that were stretched across the front, and now on the right side, and now we'll do these that from the front look like they were in the back. 2 and the nice thing about cables, as opposed to some of the other decorative or stitches, and then you finish with 5 doubles, is that they're very gender neutral. I think they look great on, you know, if you're trying to make a blanket that leans one way or the other, which a lot of people generally are. It doesn't appear to be terribly feminine or masculine. I think it looks nice in all of them. It's not a flower stitch, which many people associate with a girly thing. So that's what it looks like from the back. And when you flip it over, it's just locked those stretched stitches. It's made them stand up straight, so they're ready to be reorganized on the next row.
Looks good. Yeah,
and that's the chunky cable. So are there any questions about that? I kind of added an extra stitch, and I just didn't want to rush through anything. But I think this was a pretty easy one to do. It doesn't look terrible on the back either. No. It looks fairly even. Okay, that's good. Chunky cable. Yeah. Did you have a question? Then you just repeat rows 4 and 5 to the length that you want. We'll do one last row of double crochet and then finish with a row of single crochet.
Like the beginning. Okay.
Ready? Yeah. Okay. This next one, I think I also want to add Jacob's Ladder, which is number 65. I'm going to, nope, that's not that one. It's this one. It looks really weird until you get to the end. Okay, so Jacob's Ladder is a multiple of 5 plus 6. So if you were doing foundation single crochet, you would do a multiple of 5 plus 5. So I have 15 stitches because I like to do the foundation single row. And then I'm going to go on to starting with row 2. And rows 2 and 3 are your repeat, the whole thing. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate it before I explain it to you. I'm actually going to take this one out because that's right where I was. Okay. So chain 2. And then I'm going to do 5 double crochets. One, two, three, 4, and 5. And I'm going to stop right here because then I'm going to chain 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then I'm going to go back to that last double crochet that my chains are coming out of, and I'm going to slip stitch to the top, which is going to be right here. It doesn't really matter if you come from the back or the front. I always try to come from the front, but we played it both ways this morning and it really doesn't matter. So I go into the top of the stitch and I just keep pulling through, no yarn overs, okay? And that's it. Now I'm going to do 5 more, I think. Repeat 5 double crochets and do it again. And then I'll show you what it looks like. I'm just going to leave those chains hanging. I will say when you do those chains, if you are loose in your chaining, either try to tighten it up a little, and I'll show you why in a minute, or if they're really loose, maybe only do 8. And I'll show you why in just a second. All right, I just did 5 more. Chain 10 again. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Slip stitch into the top of that double crochet. And then finish with 5 double crochets in the last 5 stitches. And then your return row, your wrong side row, is to do single crochets, ignoring those chains. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and I'm going to show you how you finish it off. Okay. Chain 1 and turn, and I'm going to single, I'm not going to show you the front until I get done. So now I'm going to single crochet across, and I'll show you how you ignore those chains. So 5 singles first, because you want to make sure you end up with the same number of stitches. And those chains that we left hanging do make it look a little weird. Okay, so when we did those 10 chains and then hooked it back in, what it does is it makes a loop. So what she wants us to do is just ignore the loop. But what you need to know is that you need to make a single crochet on either side of that loop. Okay. So you can fold it forward, but sometimes it's hard to see where your stitch is. So I've done the first 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let me zoom in just a little. And this is one of the things I was talking about, that the top of your stitch, when you flip it over, is always to the left. So where I am right here is the top of this stitch right here, which happens to be on this side of the loop. And this is the double crochet we made, and then we made the 10 chains. So the top of that stitch is just to the left, which is really the other side of the loop. So if you think about it that way, you'll make sure that you end up with the same number of stitches. So I just kind of bend that out of the way. She says push them away from you because you want them to stay on the right side. 3, 4, and 5. So now I'm coming to my next loop. I'm going to go on one side of the loop, push it out of the way, and go to the other side of the loop. And then 5. All right. And then what happens, and those are your 2 rows. So what happens is you have all these loops. So when you're all done, you take the first one and catch it through. No, this way. Sorry. Like that. And then it gets pulled through. The next one gets pulled through.
Oh, well, I never guessed that.
I wouldn't have either. And then it gets pulled through all the way up.
Yeah.
Same
Wow.
thing here. And then when you get to the top, so you just work them all the way up. Your last row, instead of doing single crochet back, you would do double crochet back, the very last one. And when you, so I'm gonna pretend we're at the top here. I'm gonna take out some of those singles. I'm gonna change them to doubles, just so you can see what that's like. Let's make these doubles. So it'll be a little taller. And when you get to the one that is the top of your loop, you're just going to catch, you do it on that way. Hold on, I did this earlier. You do it on your wrong side. Oh, you're going to pass it underneath the corresponding loop. So you're going to do this row of double because it's going to be a little taller. And then when you come across, you're just going to catch it with the top loop to lock it into place. So when you turn it over, then your loop doesn't come unraveled like that. So it gets locked into your very last row, and then they don't come unraveled. And that's how you make the Jacob's Ladder, which I thought was very fun. Again, another nice TV project, but a really nice payoff at the end. I think it looks really complicated, and it's just not. It's all illusion. So another way to, it's kind of what I would call a mock cable, because you're not changing the order of the stitches, but you're creating a cable look that way. And I thought this would be so cute if you had like a crochet bag project or something. This would be so cute up the side of a bag, just to add a detail, because you could do it really with any stitch count as long as you put them in the same place all the time. You could have
Like a little hand finger stuff you have to do there. Just pull
exactly
them up.
right. It would be great on mittens or gloves too. Like you could just add a cable going up. Would look like a cable without being terribly complicated. So that's Jacob's Ladder, which I really liked. Now we're going to get to the beast. Some of these other ones that I didn't demonstrate are really very similar to the ones we just talked about, like the jumping lines in number 66 is
I see it. Yeah.
It's
two on, two off, two on, two off.
Exactly. And then it alternates every like 6 rows or something like that. So they're all based on things that I've shown you, just a little bit different arrangement of it. The neat sweet ribs, the same thing. Instead of extended double, it's a single with a slip stitch. The skinny ribs, again, is another just a series of front post stitches. All right, so braids. It's like, oh, it's so intriguing. It is intriguing. So it can be done. And I've gone through a repeat of it here. So this is one full repeat, which is rows 4 through 7 is your repeat. So this pattern is a multiple of 8 plus 5. So if you're doing a foundation single crochet row, it's a multiple of 8 plus 4. A lot of things in this pattern are a little bit tricky. So starting with row 2, you're going to do you're doing an extra row of single crochet before you start. Okay. So row 2 is a row of single crochet. Row 3, which is where I'm going to start. Am I going to start there? No, because I'm going to start with row 4. Our row 3, you start with 3 singles, so you have this edging of 3 singles on either side, and in the center we have 2 singles separating our 2 braids here. Okay, so you start with 3 singles and you do 6 front post double crochets. So I did those here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what sets up your braid. It's a 6 stitch braid. And you know, if you braid anything, it's usually 3 sections. So it's 3 sections of 2 stitches each, which is why we have the 6 stitches there. So then you come back again with another row of single crochet, which I've already done. And now I'm ready to start my pattern over again on row 4. And this is where it gets tricky. Okay. Row 5. I've already done the single crochet back. Row 5, chain 1 and turn. I'm going to do 3 single crochets in the beginning. 1, 2, and 3. Now I had to make myself a cheat sheet here. Let me dim this. And I had to cross it out 100 times because the stitches changed. It made me nuts. All right. Work around the next 6 front post stitches, which we have here. They've been reorganized, just like in cabling. We're changing the order of the stitches, which is why this braid thing falls into that. So here I'm going to show you where my 6 stitches are now. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have 2 going that way, 2 kind of in the back, and 2 going this way. Okay. Now, here's how you do them. You skip the first 2 stitches. So I'm going to skip these 2, and I'm going to do 1 front post treble around the next 2 stitches. Okay. I'm going to skip these 2 stitches, but I'm going to have to come back to them. So I figured out earlier today, they were really hard to see. So I'm going to put a stitch marker around those first 2 stitches, the post of the stitches, where I'm going to do them in different colors because the first one's green and the second one's purple. And you'll see why. Okay. So I'm going to skip those 2 and I'm going to do front post treble around the next 2. And one of them is a little bit hidden here. Okay. So front post treble, which means staying on the front side. 1, 2, 3. And the second one is just tucked in right there next to it. So not too bad so far. 2, 3. Okay. Now go back and work a front post treble around each of the 2 skip stitches, working these stitches behind the 2 stitches you just made. So not like the chunky cable that we did. I can't just go back over here like this. I have to go behind these stitches. So I have to pull them forward, and then I have to find those stitches. I'm telling you, that's why I decided maybe to mark them would be helpful. And it is.
Good idea, yeah.
I'm going to pull it forward. I mean, it looks great, but oh my God, who wants to do this for a whole blanket strip? Okay. Because you do have to change that they lie in the front or the back. Okay, so there's my mark stitch.
Yeah, you would have missed them if you hadn't marked them.
You would never have seen them.
Oh, no.
Okay, 2. I don't even know if I made a full triple there, but at this point, I don't care. All right, so that was the first one. And then my purple one is the next one. So again, I'm going behind those 2 first ones that I made. 2 and 2. Okay. I'll take those markers off in just a minute. And then I'm going to do the last 2, just around the last 2. And these are doubles because I'm not stretching them. They're not triples, they're just doubles. the front post doubles. Only if you are stretching it by skipping stitches or going back to stitches do you make a triple. Okay. So let me take those markers out now. So the only ones that we changed the order of were the first 4, which is how you would do a braid. You know, you put one over this and one over this. And then the one that you put over the first time, now it's the far left. So you're dealing with 3 things that keep changing position. So we changed the position of the first 4 stitches. These stayed the same. And then we do 2. I don't even know what we do. 2 singles. 1, 2. And I know I'm going to have to go into those stitches again, so I'm going to mark them again. I will say that the next braid row is not as bad. It's just going behind those stitches that was really hard. All right, so we're going to skip those 2. Find the next 2. There they are. 1 and 2. Did I yarn over twice? Now you can see why that chart looks the way it does, which is not at all helpful.
That one needs 3 dimension on it.
It really does. Really does. 2 and 3. And then pull it forward so I can work behind it. And where my stitch marker is. And at this point, I'm just praying that I'm in the right spot. I think I kept all my, I'm gonna hope that I did. Oh my God, you can hit the marker on it, I can't find it. Come on. Kept hoping after like the initial row it'd be easier, and it really wasn't. And then 2 front post doubles around the last ones. 1, 2, and then we finish with 3 singles. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Your return row is blessedly easy. Chain 1 and a single all the way across. Here's the other thing I wasn't crazy about this, is that you've got all these where you pulled it, you know, you stretched it and pulled it forward. The tops of, because you're going into post stitches, the tops of the stitches that you didn't go into are just kind of left hanging. So you can see it in this row, it leaves this gap because we didn't go into the top of the stitches, we went into the post, and they never, I would have liked it better if they had gotten like crocheted together. Otherwise you just have these little flaps, which I didn't love. One more reason I didn't love this pattern.
Yeah, that's a little odd.
A little odd, yeah.
Remember.
and again, who thinks of this stuff? So as you're coming across here, you have to make sure you're going into the tops of your stitches and not the ones that you skipped. So you're really kind of pushing those out of the way. The stretched ones are gonna, the tops of them are gonna look pretty loose, and that's okay. Just make sure you're going into the top of every stitch that you made, which again locks them into place. So this is a stretched one, because when you really stretch it and you're trying to find your stitch, it's hard to keep your tension nice and even there. Luckily, you're about to braid it again, so you're not really doing it.
Here we are.
Exactly.
Wasn't there something on one of our very first classes where we had that hanging part in the back. I'm trying
Yes,
to remember. Yeah, I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
remember what that was.
And anytime you do, when you have, I think it probably is one of the mosaic ones where you're doing a lot of front post stitches, you end up with kind of flaps
Okay.
of
Have you tried it without with counting your own, doing your own thing and using both flaps?
no, I haven't because I'm not ever going to do this again. So I didn't play with it. But I think that you probably could. You could probably do something like
It might be a little chunkier, but still.
it would. You could instead of going into you could go into like catch one of the loops of the flap along with the two loops of the
Okay.
stitch
Oh
and
yeah.
and that would kind of lock it into place a little bit on the back and keep
Yeah.
it from being
Yeah.
really flappy.
Interesting.
Okay, so then we're on to row 7, which is another braid row because you have to get it back to where you started, you have to do it twice. So this time, instead of working the first 4 stitches of the braid, stretching those, we're going to end up skipping the center stitches and stretching the first and the second. So it makes it a little easier. Chain 1, 3 single crochets in the front beginning. And I didn't feel like I had to put markers in for this part. It was easier you didn't have to work behind stitches on this braid. Okay. You're going to do the next. So we've got our 6 stitches again. 1, 2, 3, 4, which are the ones that we stretched forward and back. And then these 2, we had done doubles. So those are our 6 front post stitches she's talking about. We're going to do 1 front post double around each of the first 2 stitches. So this one, we're not stretching at all, so they're doubles. Front post around the post of that. 1, 2. So no skip stitches yet. Okay, now we're going to skip the next 2. So those ones that are kind of tucked behind, we're going to skip for now. And we're going to go to the last 2. And we're going to do a front post treble around each of those. 1, whoop, everyone over the place. So I'm skipping the ones in the back and going to these last 2. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the ones that I skipped, and I'm going to do front post trebles around the ones that I skipped, but I don't have to work behind. I just have to find them.
Yeah.
And they're a little easier to find because they're just kind of in the center, and I don't have to pull this forward to do it. They are, here's one, and here's the other. So I didn't feel the need to mark these the way I did the other ones. But now I'm regretting that. Okay, hold on. So there we go. It makes it a little easier to see. So it's hard to find your stitches, 1 and 2.
Oh. Hmm.
Once you find the first one, though, the second one just kind of pops up next to it.
That's what it looks like, yeah.
1, 2, and 3. All right. And then 2 singles in the stitches we haven't worked yet. 1. So let's see what that looks like. So it makes a braid. It does the trick, but I gotta say that first switcheroo of stitches on the braid it didn't make it worth it for me, honestly.
Yeah, it looked like the second time. I don't know if the third one will be better, but
So
the next.
So it's 2 braiding rows. The first one is where you really have to do it
Stretch.
forward, and then
Yeah.
you come back, and then you do the second braiding row, and you're skipping the center stitches, but you don't have to pull back. It's still a little bit hard to find the stitches. You would really have to keep track of what row you're on to know which braid you're supposed to do next. The return pass is pretty easy, but I didn't love the back of it either. I'm not even going to finish it because it looks,
Yeah, that looks a little, yeah,
it's a little ragged on the back.
like it's going to catch every crumb you
Yeah,
eat with this
exactly.
blanket.
But it was a challenge and I accepted it. And
Yeah.
I don't know how people's brains work that come up with this stuff.
I would
Make
love to
it
see
like that.
somebody do a whole blanket on this.
I
Yes.
know. And then we were trying to look, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here. I don't even think she used that stitch in any of her sample blankets.
Oh, I was wondering. I hadn't looked
Somebody
that
was like, which
closely.
blanket did she add that to? And we started to
Ah,
look. I don't think she used it in any of the blankets. She wanted to, I think, have 100 because there's 100 in here, I think. It may
okay.
have been one that she needed to fill out to make the 100. Not for me, but beautiful, but not for me.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
so those are ribs and cables.
that's
Does anybody have any
great.
questions?
No, I thought those were pretty straightforward, except for
I
this
think
last one.
crocheted cables are a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
Well, knitted cables I think are easier than people think they are as well. They're a little fiddlier because you often have to use a separate needle. If you think about it, you're just changing the order of the stitches. It's a lot easier to think of it that way, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a nice stitch. So my plan is to add the chunky cable because I really like the way that looks.
Mm-hmm.
And
And the
I think
Jacob's ladder.
and then and I love the Jacob's ladder.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna save this one because I think this would be a really nice filler strip if I need one.
Yeah.
There you go. Good idea.
Because I'm not doing a great job of keeping track of which color I've used because I've not finished any strip completely yet. So I need to lay out what I've got and then, ooh, I haven't used that color in a while. And then I may use this as a filler strip, but I really
And also, if you find that one of the stitches is a little harder, just go to one of the ones that you
Exactly.
haven't done and just add it.
Exactly.
Nobody's going to compare your blanket to hers.
Exactly. But I really like the way
That
that looks.
one's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then
Well, thank you.
again, the Jacob's ladder I think looks great too.
That's fun.
Yeah, and a lot easier than you think it is. So that's all I got for you today.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Gold star for you, Pam.
Thank you. So if you haven't checked the website lately, we did adjust a little bit in that we're going to do the last stitches that I'll teach are in October because we're going to take November and December instead of just December to finish because we're going to talk about blocking and getting your strips to match.
That's good.
In November. And then December we'll talk about the border and embellishments. So we wanted to have a little extra time at the end. So I believe next month we're doing some tapestry and then we'll finish with baubles, puffs, and popcorns is the plan.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You both have a good night.
You too. We'll see you later.
All right.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Okay.
Pam.
You're
Good night.
welcome. Bye.